Hello and welcome to Simon Says Artwork. In this video I'm going to be doing a drawing in my little black book. I've done a couple of drawings in here before, so there's some things which you'll have seen, such as this one. So I filmed this. I also posted a video with this sketch, so you may recognize this little black book from those videos. But in this video I'm going to be doing a page with this Tombow Fuden Osuke brush pen. This was a gift from my brother. It's a nice, it's not actual bristles for the brush pen. It's kind of a flexible nib, which I like. I've tried it a couple of times. It's a fun pen. And that's what I'm going to be doing this sketch with. So, okay, let's get started. Working in this book, it's become quite a comfortable scale for me. I do like this size, and I must admit, doing a drawing like this is also something which I'm quite happy doing. Now, this is a lovely little sleek doodling pen, and it really does remind me of the Unipin brush pen that I have. So I start off by shading in eye sockets. It's not anatomically correct or anything which is based on any kind of a reference. It's just a vague couple of shadow puddles, but not shadow puddles in the way that I usually state them to be, which is shaded in and coloured in shadow shapes where you do shape design, but more just shapes that you hatch in. That's what I'm calling shadow puddles on this occasion, because I try to make it all vertical hatching, but just show by reapplying hatching over certain areas, so it's not cross hatched but it's rehatched. I think you can create levels of depth which are beyond. You can see there I'm just going darker and darker again over the first layer of hatching, and this is just so that I can add more details to the face and a little bit more depth to it, because I like the combination of faint lines and heavier lines. Those to me create this sense of depth and form, which I'm really into. As you probably know if you've seen any of my other videos, is that I'm all about texture and form, trying to show how things turn and move, and you know where the different planes of the face are. So I've decided that the light source is coming from the left hand side, which means that I start to shade more hatching on the right hand side over the other side of the nose, but I also try to apply hatching that I use as from my memory of faces having not so much light, regardless of there being more shadow on one side of the face. I know that the light hitting the face is not brilliant white. There'll always be certain shapes where it's catching the most, so I try to cover certain areas more. Now I'm committing to certain places when I do heavier, darker lines, and that is a risk, but I'm quite comfortable drawing faces, and I thought whatever it is, it'll be an experiment, and I can always obscure parts which I'm not so happy with. So it doesn't matter whether or not I've made mistakes, because I can really just take it out by hatching and hatching over it until it disappears. But it is something which I used to do fairly often. If you haven't seen my video on hatching and cross hatching, then I will leave a link here. But it's basically something which I did when I first realised that you don't need to do outlines in order to do a drawing. You can just do lines like this and then create a face, and that's what I thought I'd do here. It's something which I haven't done very often recently, but I'm going to do a lot more of because I really enjoy it, and I like to see what happens with it, because I don't have a face in mind, and it's more something which becomes apparent as I'm creating it. Now you can see here I'm doing parts of the details of an ear, but I change my mind on this and I take it back out. It's something which I start to build and think about, and then I change my mind because it does feel as though it's sticking out too far. That's something which happens, and you just have to be honest with yourself if you're not satisfied with the appearance of something. Sometimes it's just not what it should look like. The jawline is something which is, again, can be tricky, but thankfully, because I'm aware that you can just hatch it smaller and smaller, I'm just trying to sculpt it into the size which I'm happy with. In reality, I wish I would have done it less even, like I've just tried to shade a kind of a bowl almost for the jaw, which is not incorrect, but I think I'd prefer more character where the jaw juts out a bit, or the chin juts out a bit from the jaw, I should say. But there we are, that's something for the future maybe. Here's where I removed the ear, because I realised that I'd be far happier if I just had dark sections on each side of the face and hatching which spreads all over both pages. So it's a bit of a process of going back over different sections, and this original drawing took 25 minutes, but I thought if I make it into a time lapse then it's easier to get through as far as how long a video takes to watch. I'm trying to be a bit more considerate of the viewers, because not every viewer will want to sit through a half-hour long real-time drawing. But for things like this, it can be quite interesting because it's such a strange concept. Not many people draw with just vertical lines, but I recommend trying it if you haven't done it before. With a pen like this, it does make certain things a lot more time effective, by which I mean if you hold the pen away from the paper and do wispy lines, then you get the thinner lines on the left hand side, and when you hold it closer to the page you get heavier lines like the ones at the top right, and these ones here lower down, which I'm doing. And that's because it's a flexible brush nib with no bristles, but it's called a brush pen anyway, and I really like it for doodling. Like, look at how heavy those lines can go. Really wide marks, which are very nice. Add a lot of contrast immediately, and what I like to do is leave gaps in between, just so that when you squint your eyes there's a different coverage of greys that you'll see, and that's what hatching is all about for me. It's very effective for mid-tone and creating different levels of light and shadow. Now I'm just going back over the vertical lines that I've already drawn to create it even darker and to fill in some of those gaps. Because there are always little white lines in between each of the vertical lines that I draw, if you cover over some of those it will become even darker still, which is a basic principle, but if you think about it as far as the gaps between each line are letting light through, then that determines how dark it looks from a distance. When you look at this drawing from far away, you can't really tell that it's hatching so much as it just looks like a series of grey lines, of grey patches, sorry. It doesn't look like lines at all, they all just blend together from a distance. So a lot of drawing and painting is about creating an illusion. And the face that I've created is part of the illusion as well. It's just shaded in areas and going heavier in certain parts than others. Now for this, I thought if I can do a random assortment of hatched areas and patches in certain parts, then it should have quite a nice look as far as it looking almost like a pattern, or like textiles almost, where it has certain shades and areas covered up and it almost seems like random assortments of applied marks. And that's something which I thought would look quite appealing, and I do quite like the look. It's something which I'm still working on and I haven't quite perfected, but I do enjoy practicing and I like the look of it. Now I've noticed here that when I shade over on the right hand side I struggle a little bit, so what I decide to do in a moment is to try and get a rest for my hand, because I can sketch inside of the page here and it's quite comfortable, but the further out to the right that I go, the more the lines start to go a bit wobbly and it's tricky, and I try to keep them as neat as possible, even though you can see that my lines aren't straight. They are very wobbly and wonky all over the place, but I'm trying to keep them as straight as possible not to look like mechanical lines. I don't mind it being wobbly, but just so that I'm not straying into diagonal lines randomly. I like the effect being vertical, because it's almost as though you're seeing someone through rain or something which has been printed, or just like it has a strange difference in quality to what other things have when you do cross hatching. Not a more quality, not higher quality, I don't mean it as that, but it just has a different effect on the piece altogether. Now, I think I'm watching something here, which is why I'm pausing, because I have a screen off to the side and I'm watching something. I'm sure it'll be a podcast or something. And I just paused to watch an interesting moment of a podcast. But yeah, I'm starting to be a bit more conscious about the ergonomics of the drawing environment which I'm doing. So this sketching that I'm doing here, I start to notice it's really tricky. So I get a couple of notebooks, I put them there, and it's much easier to draw. That's the reason I've done that anyway. So if you're doing the same thing where you have a fairly thick sketchbook and you notice that drawing on one side is difficult, then just get something to raise up the level of the desk so that you're almost level with the page. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, just not quite such a steep difference, because it does affect how the marks look on the paper. Now, I quite like this. This is becoming quite a decent coverage for it, so this is something which I was aiming for, is trying to get patchworks of hatching all over the page. Bits of darker areas and bits of mid-tone. I've completely abandoned the idea of trying to go for any other anatomical details. Anything which you can interpret from this, so anything that looks like hair or a neck or a chest, is going to be interpreted by the audience and not concentrated on by me at all, because the features on the face, I just start to work little bits here and there, and then once I'm happy that I've got those enough, then I try to just move on from it. Now, the shadow side of the face does need a bit more shadow, so I just go light here so that it's not completely coated in black shadow, but it has a darker tone, and I think that really helps. Also, the lower parts of the face catch less light, and the light side of the face, so the left hand side, that part of the chin, I've tried to make the gaps between the lines larger, just so that you can get the impression of the light hitting the forehead, the cheek, and part of the chin. And that's fairly natural spread of light from what I've experienced. It's not going to be photographic or anything phenomenally accurate, but it's enough for me to be satisfied that it's an interesting face and it's believable, and I quite enjoy creating characters from nothing. Now, on reflection, I wish I would have done a face which was a little bit more, I don't know, I suppose had a bit more of character to it in a strange way, but I don't dislike the drawing, so I don't want to give the impression that I don't like the face. I quite like how the lips are a bit warped. I look back here to look at the other previous face that I drew. Sadly, I didn't film that one. And then I do a little few other marks on the lips here, just to make sure that I'm limiting the amount of light that is hitting the lips, because I think that's what I do on the previous one that I drew. I do prefer the previous face, so I might do another one like that in the future. Okay, so that is the drawing done. Now, I think it looks quite interesting. I tried to get an even spread of the hatching to cover both of the pages. The face was, I tried to keep it quite obscured. As you've seen in the footage, I started to do an ear, but then I changed my mind just to try and get some kind of sleek strip panel of the face, instead of having ears poking out too far, because I had the ear detail as if they poked out, far like that, which they don't always do. As you can see with this camera angle, you can only see the tops of my ears. So sometimes I start drawing ears and then think, I'll remove those. They're not the most important detail, and it's changing the whole character of the face. So I pulled it back, got it a bit darker there, and now it's got to a place where I think it's quite an interesting drawing, and I thought I'd leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. Once you do it, The only thing that happens is that when I post a video and you're on YouTube, there'll be a little red dot where there's a subscription tab. And that's all it is. It's just, that's all that happens when you subscribe. But if you do subscribe, I say ring the notification bell, because when you press the bell symbol, you have 3 options. You either get no notifications, which is none. You get personalized notifications where you select what you want notifying on, or it's all. And I've selected all for every channel that I've subscribed to. And I've subscribed to quite a few channels. Like I subscribed to Proco and James Gurney and the Super Annie one for Kim Jong-gi videos, things like that. So it really doesn't hurt. You don't get bombarded with notifications, and it doesn't, leave loads of emails in your, like spam coming through. So it's just a harmless thing, but it really helps the channel. So for my channel, it would really help me get circulated by the algorithm and seen by more viewers. That's why I ask people to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell, is it doesn't do a lot for you, but it does a hell of a lot for me. So if you don't mind doing that, I'd really appreciate it. But if you can't, then thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.